Hey everybody, I'm Hamish. I'm part of the team at Circles. We're helping players optimize their performance and ultimately shoot lower scores faster. We provide players with a comprehensive understanding of performance level and a blueprint for how you can reach your performance goals faster. Today I'm joined by James Sinclair, co-founder of Golf Guru. James, I really appreciate you joining to share knowledge on the mental side of golf. Excited to dive into some of the psychology behind the mental performance and explore some of the practical techniques that golfers can do every day to improve their mental performance out on course. We share in our goal to help players improve, and I'm really looking forward to exploring some new opportunities for players today. So to start, can you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got started with Golf Guru?
Yeah, of course. So a little bit of background on me. My life has sort of seemed to flick between golf and music, and now at the point of working on Golf Guru for the last few years. It's been an idea of mine for a bit longer than that. My background in golf, I think, is relevant to how we started with Golf Guru. So I was a bit of a late comer to it. Started playing as soon as I had a car, basically, because I grew up in the middle of nowhere in the UK, and really focused on it after I left school. Got down to a plus handicap. Was playing to a decent level and really discovered the mental side of it then through books, and was so passionate about it. I changed my planned university degree. I was going to go and read history, and ended up doing this kind of wacky golf management degree at the University of Birmingham. It was co-founded by the PGA based nearby, and while I was there, got very into the psychology of the game, but at the same time realized that there was kind of a lack of understanding, a lack of respect almost for that side of the game from the PGA, which is perhaps a little bit controversial to say, but if anything, it made me more interested in it. From there, again, long story short, ended up working in the music industry, not really playing a lot of golf through a lack of time and money. And when I did, I really struggled, developed the yips, had a torrid time, nearly put my clubs away for good. But ended up kind of coming back into the game with a renewed desire to, freshen my mental approach, because I knew obviously that was the source of my struggles, or the main one. And in doing so, realized still that the mental side is kind of, the way I describe it is, it doesn't really have the seat at the table that it deserves alongside the physical and the technical sides. And so it was a desire of mine to change that. And through people that I knew in the music industry, started talking about this a bit more. They were golfers too, obviously, and understood what I was on about. And that's how Golf Guru started, trying to create a different offering, a more contemporary offering in the psychological side of golf, the mental side of golf, that will help people apply what currently is in books, or you might learn from working with a psychologist one-on-one. Make it something that you can access 24/7 through your phone just by popping your headphones in. And that's literally the genesis a few years ago, where we created a few audio sessions, just me and some friends, tested it on the driving range, and it appeared to work. So yeah, we're now at the point with our app out and starting to help more and more golfers around the world. So yeah, that's a bit of background.
That's incredible. And I mean, I think that journey is something that a lot of us can relate to in our times going through those struggles with our golf. And I find it fascinating that we do talk about golf so much as being a really positive for our mental health and, whatever level that you're playing, but, so little attention is given to, the mental side of the game and helping to make sure that you're maintaining that headspace. So, yeah, I mean, as I say, I've been using Golf Guru myself and definitely see the advantages of it as you start to focus into that area. So yeah, really excited to continue this conversation. So I'm keen to just get straight into it, and from kind of, as you look at your own experience through golf and that journey that you've taken, and now working with players and coaches, what are the key things that you kind of see necessary for them to be successful?
You know, obviously think about this a lot ever since starting golf guru and looking back at what I learned at university and since, and all the different people I've met since doing this as well, a range of, you know, the top psychologists I've been speaking to. For me, there's like three key themes basically that you can kind of, they're like the sort of umbrella terms which all the other stuff we talk about kind of, you know, sits under. Pretty much every single golfer out there is struggling with something, you know, negative going on with their mental performance during a round of golf. And you can kind of bucket those into lack of confidence, into an inability to stay focused during the course of a round, and a struggle to stay calm under pressure. So that's what everything that we do at Golf Guru is about. It's trying to identify, do you struggle with one of those or three of those? It tends to be a mixture with kind of one maybe a little bit more prevalent than others. And then just target those. You know, we're not trying to make you absolutely bulletproof, for example, in confidence, but it's about raising those to a level where it's about your mind working for you rather than against you, and having the tools to stay calm, confident, and focused. If you can do that more often, kind of on the micro level, like individually on shots throughout a round, on the macro level, just throughout the round in general, you're going to play better. And that's pretty much, I would say, how you can, you know, define in broad strokes what you'd want a golfer of any level to look like. It's calm, confident, and focused. Yeah,
It makes sense. I think about that, and with it, there it seems that, you know, with the lack of necessarily self-awareness, you could say, coming into this, as we, you know, often go through when we take this journey, is there an element of trial and error that comes around in terms of figuring out, you know, which of those buckets are the key things to focus on? Or, you know, how does a player go about figuring out which of the areas that might be the most impactful for them, unique to their own game and their own kind of mental conditioning?
yeah, that's a really good question. You know, you need to, first of all, to, and most golfers I would say struggle with this, like, have a process for not getting caught up in the moment after shots, a way for you to kind of objectively look at what's just happened and just ask the question why, just be curious with no judgment. So it kind of starts with that rational awareness, and then obviously doing that throughout the course of a round will help you, but you've got to do it after a round too. And I think golfers, again, because of the way the sport is, like, you know, you've commonly got quite a long journey home, you know, on your own, probably in the car, like your mind's going to be going over everything that's happened. And lots of people that ends up like dragging into when they get home as well, and they start, you know, Googling things, you know, going down YouTube rabbit holes, thinking about, oh, what went wrong with my swing. But people just having like a bit of a process to objectively look at what happened and why, and realize that it's not going to be like one round you can look at and go like, okay, cool, I now have the answer, I'm struggling with this. But you can start to see some themes developing. Again, like that process will vary depending on the individual, but that's essentially what it comes down to. You know, you're gonna have to start reviewing your rounds, trying to work out, well, what was it? Was I really fucking nervous at this particular point, or throughout the course of the round, or, you know, over the last 3 holes because I had a good score going, or, you know, there's certain types of shots where I'm just like, I have no confidence whatsoever. You know, for certain players that could be playing out of bunkers, it could be short putts or whatever. Or for some people, again, by rationally looking at what happened, they might realize that their mind was just all over the place, thinking about work, thinking about their kids, thinking about like whatever, and they just weren't focused. So I think it starts with that. It starts to kind of, you know, realize that going forwards, you want to start looking at your rounds of golf, reviewing those afterwards with no judgment, and just pick out the key themes around those 3 cores I'm talking about: being confident, being calm, and being focused.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's trying to fight the urge to look at the technical side of things as well, right? Because the easiest thing to fall back on is that there's something technically wrong with the way that I was playing, as opposed to it was the headspace that I was in,
Yeah.
and that those are the things that I should be addressing to be able to allow myself to apply my technical capabilities at their best, at the highest level while I'm out there.
Yeah, like that's totally worth flagging, because I think to the world of golf is very obsessed with the technical side, and I would say that that's becoming more so with the ability to which you can study golf swings and sort of look at all the numbers associated with it immediately on a TrackMan, and that's absolutely fine. But for most golfers, just thinking that it's about that is kind of very short-sighted, I think, and will cause a lot of anxiety. Yeah, you just got to be really careful of that. The point is that you can see your swing, you can understand what's going on, you can get someone to give you an opinion of like where you're going wrong, and if you start listening to all of that, you're going to end up probably worse off, right? You can't measure really what's going on with your mind, and people don't really think about it in those terms. Like, there are mental performance scorecards and things, but they're quite sort of laborious to engage with, and they're not particularly, like, they're not that much fun. And I think it's just, as I said, a case of you can do it in 2 or 3 minutes of just sitting down with no distractions, just thinking like, right, actually, what was going on for me today? Make a paragraph of notes, date that, do it again your next round. And after 5 or 6 rounds, you're going to start pulling out some themes. And that's one way to start to kind of like measure what's going on with your mindset, when you're playing golf, in a way that will allow you to target what is going to be most effective for helping you improve with that. Yeah.
And so that kind of journaling process is a really good way for players to get started if they're thinking about this, as a way to kind of analyze their overall. I keep going back to the word headspace, but the way that they're prepared for a round mentally.
Yeah, and like some of the people that I think golf is really good at getting you to focus on like what went wrong and like, ways in which you sucked during that round. But I think it works both ways. Like, journaling can be so important for reminding yourself what you did well. And that's, I'm thinking of like one guy who I chat to regularly here in the UK about his golf. Like, he will invariably end up telling me what went wrong with his most recent rounds of golf. And I'm like, okay, now tell me about the good shots and what you were doing well. And that's another hugely important process. I mean, it's like very common knowledge, I would say now, but like journaling your good shots over time can have this like hugely valuable effect if you're able to commit to the process of doing it after a round. I mean, it literally takes 2 minutes, 3 minutes. But again, you start to pull out these themes when you hit good shots, like what's going on? Where was your mind at? So you just need to start with that process after a round of kind of rationally reviewing it, what was going on in your mind when things were going badly and when things were going well, and start to pick out the themes. And that's something that will start helping you improve, definitely.
So you've mentioned a couple of times in there, 2 minutes here and 3 minutes there, and I don't mean to lead you into this, but I'm interested, as you work with players that are starting down this journey again, what are some of the misconceptions that people have as they think about building mental resilience and building that kind of calm, confident mentality on the golf course?
Yeah, misconceptions. I think there are a few things that spring to mind, right? So one that I always like, I've never really talked about this with anyone, but I just think is kind of, again, a bit of a common problem in golf, perhaps, is that this idea of having a pre-shot routine is really good for your mental performance to help you be more consistent. You know, good players have a pre-shot routine. It's this sort of like rhetoric or whatever. But I think people misunderstand what a pre-shot routine is or what it's supposed to do. And it's so funny when you see certain things on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, TikTok, there's like a pre-shot routine is apparently choosing what club to hit and doing some practice swings and lining up and stepping in and then pulling the trigger. And it's sort of like, I think that's a real problem because you end up just going through the motions. It's a physical thing. People don't talk about your pre-shot routine. Doesn't have to be all of that. Like it can just be the most important part, for example, can be getting your mind ready right at the end of it. And that's kind of some of the stuff that we teach in the app. It's you can do all that stuff absolutely fine, pick the club, whatever, go through practice swings, but it's understanding why you're doing all those things and then making sure it puts you at a place when you're ready to pull, standing over the ball, ready to pull the trigger, where your mind is exactly where you want it to be. That for me is a misconception. People talk about a pre-shot routine, they just don't really ever refer to like what the point of it is.
I might just dive into that one quickly as well, because it brings me to, and I do want to go back and have a chat about some of the other misconceptions as well. But, you know, one of my favorite sessions within the Golf Guru, platform is the, Make More Putts, I think it's called, talking about TBA. So, identification of a target, belief in the ability to make the putt, and then giving up control to make a carefree stroke. And so the utilization of these kind of mental processes as a way to not go through a routine, but as a way to mentally prepare yourself before you kind of go through that shot, finding that as a way to stop those voices that start to come through as you've got a shaky 3-4 footer that's that's important for the match. So do you see there being a really good relationship in the ability to use mental performance as not a replacement of a shot routine necessarily, but rounding out the way that you approach a shot by thinking about and executing the mental techniques, and not only just thinking about the waggle of the club and standing behind the ball.
Yeah, like that's a perfect example of what I'm trying to explain, right? So you can have a pre-shot routine, but it can be completely useless and pointless if you're still standing over the ball having last second doubts. And that's not really commonly what people will teach as part of a pre-shot routine. So people will go through the motions kind of to start with, maybe get benefit just from doing that, having some consistency and kind of like feeling therefore a little bit more grounded and, focused over the ball. But over time, there's nothing in there that helps them from commonly like where they step into the ball and when they actually pull the trigger. And there's all kinds of different things you can do. You can have a focus on the target. You can have one swing thought. You can have a completely dead, empty mind. And again, that will depend to some extent, on the player and what actually works for them. And there's a bit of discovery to be done there. But the Make More Putts session you talk about is a great example of how you can, still go through your process of reading the putt, lining up your ball or not, taking practice strokes behind the ball or next to the ball, like one of those or three of those or none, like no practice strokes. But then it's like, right, all of that is pointless if you then stand over the putt and you're thinking like, well, hang on a minute, like, is it actually like, 2 inches outside right, or like, is it kind of actually, it looks a bit more like it's an inch now, so should I split the difference? Or, well, okay, right, okay, well, I'm taking too long now, so like I guess I'm gonna just hit it anyway. It's just ridiculous, but it's very common. Whereas if you can do that putting session we talked about, practice that little routine, it's literally 10 seconds, maximum. All you're going to do as soon as you're stood over the ball is you just go like, that's my target. I believe that if I hit my target, this putt has a chance of going in. Like, that's what you tell yourself. You know, if you're not going to hit the putt with that, what is the point? But then you also say to yourself, like, well, you know what? Like, I'm not going to try and control it. I'm going to putt as if I don't care if I'm going to miss. And then you hit it. Boom, it's gone. TBA, target, belief, attitude. You hit the putt, it goes in or it misses. Like, you can immediately evaluate where your mind was at. So you can go, oh, it missed. Well, my target must have been wrong because I totally believed that I could make it. Let's say it misses, but you then go, oh, well, I actually didn't really believe I could make that, or I didn't make that carefree stroke. Well, it was the belief, or it was the attitude part. And so you're just immediately able to evaluate what it was that helped you hold it, or helped you, or contributed to you missing, and pick out themes. Like, when I started doing that, it was really valuable because I realized I would be very into my target, but there was a sort of like, I wouldn't believe 100% that I was giving the putt the maximum chance of going in by just being zeroed in on that target and accepting that that was the best I could do. But for me, the biggest impact personally was this attitude part of making a stroke where I actually didn't give a shit. Like, if I missed, it sort of sounds kind of paradoxical, but it totally frees you up. For me, it kind of almost makes me black out. And I've heard people describe that before. And you just end up hitting these really, really good kind of loose putts that just threaten the hole. And if you're doing that TBA well, like, a lot more of them start going in. So it's a really powerful end of the routine process that gets your mind in a really good place to, I would argue, guarantee making more putts, not making all your putts, but making more.
Absolutely. And I love that it's got the reflection element in there as well, right? You know, after it's taken, you're reflecting. It's the same way that you're reflecting after a round, but it's the consciousness around it, which is fantastic.
Well, I think as well, just quickly on that, there's a reason why it's called TBA as well. It's like, you can't, if you do all those things well, you still can't guarantee you're going to hole a putt. You know, there are too many other variables in play, but it's to be announced whether it goes in or not. Like, that's the idea. Even if you do that stuff well, if you do it well, you're going to hit really good putts that threaten the hole more often. On certain days, a lot of those are going to drop. And on days where you're not quite there, you're still going to hole more. So, you know, but all the other shit you do beforehand is sort of like, yeah, it wants to be consistent, but it doesn't really matter if your mind's not in the right place just before you hit a putt or any shot. So that's a really important part of what we teach in the app.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I stole you away from some of the misconceptions, so I'll let you return to those in terms of some of the other things that you see and people get into.
Yeah. So where was my mind going? My mind was going to, like, I think, like anything in golf, people just expect immediate results. And what I would actually argue is that the mental side, you are going to get those more than any other part of the game, really. It's quite shocking, the changes that can happen through changing your mental approach. The shots that you will save yourself, particularly for like mid and higher handicaps where, you know, you might have a few disaster holes. I mean, if you can reduce those, it can dramatically impact your scores. So I think there are some real short-term gains to be had, but quite often when that starts to fade, people sort of turn off from it and then maybe come back to it again later. I think, like, the way to look at the mental side is a very small amount of application over a, you know, the space of a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year, preferably like ongoing, can just have a huge impact on your relationship with the game, how much you enjoy it, and therefore how you play and the scores you shoot. So yeah, it's like understanding that it is something that you do want to maintain in the long term, but it's really not a huge commitment. It's the lowest hanging fruit in golf commonly, I would argue. And then the other one I was thinking of is just that confidence is this term that I've been talking about, and then lots of people talk about, and we think about top golfers, being really confident on weeks that they win, or just generally in parts of their game. And it's sort of got this connotation of being like bulletproof, was what I was going to say. And I think it's important to put confidence under the microscope and to try to help people understand that if that's what they're chasing, this idea that they're going to step onto the golf course feeling confident with no nerves, with no doubts, with no worries at all, you're actually looking at confidence in totally the wrong way, because experiencing that stuff is really, really natural, and it happens to people at all levels of the game. Even the top players, like, they still get nervous, but confidence is the ability to perform in spite of that sort of discomfort that you're experiencing, to get out of your own way, to not have it inhibit performance. And it sort of sounds a little bit, again, like paradoxical to say, well, hang on a minute, I'd be confident, but I'd still be feeling really nervous. You can just still perform. Like, you've sort of trained under pressure, you've trained under stress a little bit, and you've realized that you can still perform, that you trust yourself in spite of all the chaos that might be going on in the round of golf, to be able to hit the ball well and shoot a good score. So yeah, I just think that's a common misconception. People think that, hang on a minute, I want to be confident and I shouldn't be having any doubts or worries, but it's actually not like that for people.
I think one of the references I was kind of always told about with mental health and mental strength is to treat it the same way as the physical side of things, right? You can have your off days, and just because you're at peak physical performance doesn't mean you don't get tired and you don't suffer from fatigue in different ways. And I think anyone that thinks that these top players have a long putt on 18 with a major on the line, and that they don't have nerves and these things don't come across their minds, it's illogical. But like anything, you just got to continue working at it, and over time that that stuff will start to dissipate, but it will always be there.
Exactly. It's like, if I was going to just double down on that, it's almost this idea, if you can, of like, when you're experiencing nerves or discomfort or whatever, you, rather than resist it and go, I shouldn't be feeling this, you actually kind of welcome it. And by doing that, you immediately, in some ways, shine a light on it, and it doesn't have as much of an impact on you. And top players are good at doing that, and then doubling down on their processes, on their routines and things, and just being able to perform in spite of it. I heard Johnny Wilkinson describe confidence as, or another alternative definition of confidence as, excitement over the future, and excitement over the unknown, which obviously the future holds. You don't know what's going to happen. So it's like, in spite of whatever you're facing, and let's say it's a round of golf, it's being confident is actually saying that whatever comes at me, I'm excited for the challenge that it poses, rather than going like, oh shit, like, I'm worried about what's going to happen today. If you're confident, you go, this round of golf, anything could happen. I accept that, and it's going to be really challenging. It's going to make me feel uncomfortable, but I'm excited for that challenge. Like, that's the definition of a confident person in his eyes. And I think that's it's just a misconception that about confidence, the way we talk about it in golf and just sports in general. It's sometimes a little bit unrealistic for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to kind of take a little bit of a little bit of a sidestep, but in a way kind of follow that theme, but talk into affirmations a little bit further. So, as a little bit of context, with circles, we work with players, and it's really interesting that they spend time tracking their performance. They go out and get a really good understanding of how they're playing in different areas of the game, and they often will come away learning that a particular part of their game they may have thought was a weakness, and putting is always a good one to kind of fall back on when we always think, oh, I'm a bad putter because I missed that putt, but when they actually look at the objective performance that sits behind it, they realize that could actually be a really big strength. They could be playing at the level they should be, or even far beyond that. So as that relates, you guys work a lot in affirmations. You talk a lot about affirmations. Could you give a little bit of background about what that means in the game? And I'm interested in your thoughts on how objective analysis of performance can aid affirmations to help players kind of build that confidence and ultimately be able to perform at a high level on the course.
Yeah, so affirmations are, it sort of relates heavily to self-talk, the way that you are more like on a subconscious level communicating with yourself, and the self-image that you therefore have in relation to, again, talking about golf, like you as a putter, as like all the different parts of your game, you'll have a kind of self-image in a way that you talk to yourself about it. Affirmations are kind of this way of long-term targeting what you think about yourself, if that makes sense. Like the way that they typically get talked about in golf, and the way that we've created them in the Golf Guru app, is these sort of short bursts of positive self-talk relating to different parts of your golf game. The idea being that you listen to those, throughout the course of a few weeks, a few months, ideally, like, over the course of a long time, like with all of this stuff. And it's just changing that dialogue that you have with yourself. It's changing what you're feeding your subconscious mind. And over time, by virtue of doing that, you start to exhibit some of the qualities that you are, like telling your subconscious mind that you are. So, you might be someone who's not a particularly good putter or not particularly confident, but I can tell you right now, if you start telling yourself that you are, over time, you're going to start believing that a little bit more. You're going to become a better putter. You might as well start telling yourself that. What's the point in telling yourself that you're a shitty putter? I mean, you are going to do that. So it sort of relates back to this, like, it makes me think of this really common phrase that I know is in a lot of Dr. Bob Rotella's books. He always references this psychologist called William James, I think it is, who kind of surmised like all the research he did throughout his career, and it came back to this theme, which was people by and large become what they think of themselves. And I think affirmations really relate to that, because if you can use positive affirmations to change the way that you think about yourself, you're going to change your behaviors. And if that is related to, generally you as a golfer or specific parts of your game, you'll be able to change your dialogue, change the way you behave, and that's going to have a positive impact.
Absolutely. And I guess in a part way as well, it's probably just getting out of your own way with some of these things, right? Like those negative thoughts that can come in can cause the fact that you get nervous over things and you end up performing at a different level, where if you're able to kind of remove yourself from that and observe yourself in the role as opposed to kind of be nervous in it, then that can have that lasting benefit on your game as well.
Yeah, getting out of your own way is a really interesting phrase. It's kind of also become this like very common one in golf and sport in general. It relates back really to what I said earlier, like I really think of it, I'm sure lots of other people do as well, but this idea of you're typically, I would say for golfers, and I guess this is the same in other sports as well, but it seems to be very prevalent in golf that your mind is inhibiting performance. You know, it's not like a tool that's there to help you. It tends to be something that like negatively impacts certain parts of your game or your overall game. So getting out of your own way is sort of, yeah, stopping that and preventing that, but also ideally creating a situation where your mind is there as a tool to be used to help you play better. And quite often that's also in the context of getting out of your own way, simply turning your mind off or removing the negativity, or again, in the context of positive affirmations, changing the dialogue so that it's helpful rather than a hindrance. Yeah, so getting out of your own way, it's like that could be also totally quietening your mind. It's not necessarily replacing a negative with a positive always. Again, that sort of, that does, in my experience, vary depending on the individual a bit.
But yeah, I would agree with that again in terms of just, you know, my own experiences and removal of negative thoughts and that through that process is a powerful thing, right? It's can only be a benefit to your game. I'd like to talk a little bit about mental performance in practice. We've talked a lot about it out in the round and out on the course, and you know, I think we all suffer or we've all been able to relate back at times to, you know, going out for practice sessions being intentional but somewhat being aimless, you know, going out and hitting balls and just falling into that routine of being on the range. We may not be practicing the right things and challenging ourselves in the right way in those areas. And I'd argue that, you know, in practice, we're probably doing very little on the mental side of the game as well. I'm interested in how you can bring that in whilst you're on the, you know, whilst you're on the practice green or whilst you're out hitting balls on the range. What are some of the things that you can be doing as a part of that training session that can assist you in that mental development?
Yeah, that's a really good one. And you know, one thing I always think about this stuff is like it's quite unglamorous, unfortunately, you know, and it very much, if you want to do this stuff, it very much depends on like how badly you want to become a better golfer. Because for some people, going to the range and hitting balls and not really like stressing too much about working on stuff that's going to help you on the golf course, like that's fine. You know, going to the range can also just be a very like nice thing to do. But if you want to get better, then there are a few kind of like common themes, I would say. Firstly, it's about getting your technical practice done, if that's like something that you need to do. And for a lot of golfers, it is like staying on top of your technique or making a big change or whatever. Then I just think that needs to be parked. You know, you need to find a point during the course of like your however many balls you're hitting to just like stop that and start to do something related to your mental game. And I'm not talking about a lot, like all the sessions we have in the app, you know, they're maximum 15-minute sessions that you might do on the range or the putting green. It's not going to take a lot of your time, but that's because, again, like just doing a little bit will have a big impact. Then it could be all kinds of things, but, you know, working on your pre-shot routine or like whatever. But a common theme, something that everyone I speak to, I urge to do, is to stress test on the range. So to try and create some kind of pressure, you know, there are various games you can play. You can imagine playing a course, like whatever, but you just try to make yourself uncomfortable in a way that, you know, it's never going to completely simulate what's going to happen on the course, but it just means that there's accountability in your practice, which if you're hitting balls on the range, you know, for fun or just working on your technique, there isn't really accountability over what the ball does. So that's like a very easy starting point. Create a situation where, you know, you need to hit a certain number of balls into a certain like area with your driver and your 3-wood in order to, like, you know, mean that you're hitting fairways or whatever it is. But what I would also say, and this is like maybe a little bit more niche, but I just think is something that, again, pretty much every golfer would benefit from in a small way. It baffles me, this is particularly when you see really good players on the range hitting like 10, 15, 20 drivers in a row. I just do not understand personally why you would ever hit 2 drivers in a row anyway, because I feel like you're on some subconscious level, like, when do you do that on the golf course?
Yeah.
You do it when things go really badly, right? If you're hitting, if I take the driver out of my bag and I hit a drive and it doesn't go where I want it to go, me as a good player, I'm probably going to subconsciously try to correct what I did. That to me is just like reinforcing the mistake as well in some ways. I will make a point deliberately, and this is what I encourage everyone to do. If you hit a really bad shot or particularly a bad driver on the range, put the club away. Like, it takes a lot of discipline, and hit like a 50-yard wedge shot, because you accept that, like, you're bigger than the outcome of that shot, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Than it makes you feel. And so you don't go chasing the fix. You accept that, like, for example, if that happens on the golf course, I have to accept it. So I'm going to accept it here now and realize I just didn't execute it well. And that takes a lot of discipline, but that is something I would urge everyone to do. Never hit the same club twice in a row. But I think that almost relates more to the bigger clubs, driver and 3-wood, than it does the others. Like, you know, hitting a 2 or 3 8-irons in a row and then changing to like a 5 or like wedge, that's fine. But I just think personally, hitting 2 drivers in a row on the driving range ever is criminal.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was making a couple of changes to my pre-round routines with this as well. But no, I see what you mean there is, and it actually it goes back to a lot of what we've talked about already as well, and acceptance of the result and moving forward from that, as opposed to dwelling on it and getting into that mindset of, you know, what have I done wrong and what I need to do differently, but just looking at it and going, this is how that shot went, reflecting on it, and then being able to move forward next time. So I guess in a way, by doing that approach, you really are working on the skills that you want to be able to replicate as you go around, you know, in a competitive round or in a casual round even, but whilst you're on the course.
Yeah, and like, it sort of makes me think that, I don't know, just as off the top of my head now, but like, there's a lot of resistance that goes on the driving range. Like, we try to, you know, ensure that we're going to hit good shots, and like, you know, it's just, I don't know, like, making it more like the golf course is a cliche that you hear, but if you can do that just in small ways, it will really help you. And rather than trying to fix a bad swing, you know, again, it's just, I just worried of talking about in cliches, but like, you see someone hit a bad shot, quite often they've raked in a ball before the other one has even landed, because they're desperate to correct it. That is not something that helps you once you step onto the golf course. Like, if you can accept the bad swing and just do your best on the next one, like, without reacting to what just happened, it's just a much, like, you find yourself just in a much calmer, more relaxed state of mind. And it's funny, you start to realize what other people are doing on the range who are having like mini freakouts, you know, and you just feel quite nice and quite meditative on the range when it's like that. So yeah.
We've all seen those meltdowns if we haven't been a part of them ourselves, as it comes through as well. But as we're kind of coming towards the end of the time, I'm interested just in a very kind of broad question. You know, people that are thinking about, you know, starting to work on this part of the game, they've listened to this or they've been thinking about it in other times. Are there any other kind of suggestions that you have for them, or you know, positive words of encouragement, even just to give it a go, and thoughts about how they can get started?
Yeah, like whether you've never done anything sort of related to your mental game, or you have, but you feel a little bit you know, like you've read certain books and kind of some of that stuff has started to wear off. I think that's definitely, both of those are a great starting point for the audio sessions that we have in our app, because applying the stuff that we have like in real time as you hit golf balls at the range, or like, you know, you listen as you're driving to the golf course, it's a lot more immediate, the impact that it can have, you know, from our sessions. A lot gets lost in translation, I guess, from like reading a book through to being able to apply it when you are actually like on the course or at the range, and you know, like you don't take the book with you there. So yeah, for people new to all that stuff, I think it's a much more engaging and faster format, where it removes a lot of the guesswork around, you know, different concepts around the mental game, like commitment and visualization, because we're actually going to describe to you how those should feel. And then for people who have done some mental game related stuff in the past, like I feel like there are so many more, you know, like you might have a great pre-shot routine, for example, but just having the ability to dive into some of the visualizations in the app, or starting to meditate with a focus on your golf. Like we have loads of great guided meditations in there. That could be a really, really great place to start too. So yeah, like it's, as I said earlier, it just doesn't really take a lot. It's not a huge commitment, you know. 5 or 10 minutes a few times a week will have a big impact if you start to make that something that you do over the coming weeks and months, and perhaps even into the future. Yeah, it can have a huge impact, and it doesn't take a lot.
So, now, as we do now close out the conversation, I want to kind of mention a great offer that we do have available for everyone that is watching and listening in, where we've got a month free of Golf Guru and Circles, with a specific focus on some putting practice that can be done through Golf Guru, and then the ability to be able to track your improvement over time in Circles. But James, just hoping you can give a really quick overview to the folks listening and watching about what this course will look like.
Yeah, so it's a really exciting opportunity to work at your mental game in relation to your putting in particular over the next month, and to be able to actually track what's happening, you know, through Circles is going to be really exciting. We're going to be diving into quite a lot of the stuff we've talked about and some other bits that we haven't, but it's going to be a comprehensive course of sessions that, you know, are both applied, like things that we will do on the putting green, you know, and talk you through ways that, you know, you immediately giving you different techniques and tools to take out onto the golf course, but also starting to look at some of the other things I've mentioned, like visualization and meditation, and just showing you how easy those are to do, because all of it is guided. You know, all you need to do is pop your headphones in and just listen, and you know, see what works for you. All these things will work. It's kind of like a journey of discovery of different things that will help you putt better, help you, again, bring it back to what I said near the start, to be more calm, confident, and focused as you step onto the putting green and all the way up until actually even after you've hit the putt as well. So that's what this is all about. And yeah, very excited for people to give it a go.
Fantastic. And all you need to do is register an account by downloading Golf Guru on the App Store or Google Play, registering for an account from Circles at drawmorecircles.com, and using the promo code in both GG September 22, and hopefully we'll have that coming up on this video, but GG September 22, all in caps, and you'll get 1 month free. All of the instructions about this course is available in both our platforms. And we're really looking forward to seeing you there and helping you improve across your game. So, look, James, thank you so much for your time today. Sharing your knowledge and helping players, not only achieve a strong mental game for that calm and confidence that you talk about on the course, but also, really helping people, build that relationship that they have with the game. So we really do appreciate all you do for golfers who aspire to unlock their full ability. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Hamish. It's awesome to chat.
Cheers.